Hey guys, my name is Shai and I am very excited about this video because we have the very special Mantis beings coming through. I know I've talked about them once or twice before. They don't come through that often, or rather what I am finding out literally right now, like as in the last half an hour, has been how much I personally have been like resonating with their energy and how much I have been like channeling my own parallel mantis self essentially my whole life, how deeply I am connected to their energy, but haven't necessarily like consciously noticed this. Even though I've had this come up a few times, it's like I'm suddenly being shown my whole life and going like, that was Mantis, that was Mantis, that was Mantis, that was Mantis, all the way through. So before I get to like the cards and the messages, I want to kind of introduce them and their energy a little bit more because they are really not very personable. They don't really have human skills. They're not like, if you have a mantis guide coming through, they're not going to be like hanging out, like sending you the warm fuzzies and, you know, giving you encouragement all of the time. Just because that's just not how they are, right? That's just not, not at all how they are. But they are definitely what we would call benevolent. At least the group that I'm aware of, that I'm tuned into. There can always be other groups of beings, right? I never want to make like a sweeping statement about an entire intergalactic species, right? But the group that I'm tuned into, and that you know, that will be coming through for you guys, whoever is seeing this video, they're definitely benevolent. You know, they work for the greatest good of all, but at the same time, like, they themselves don't even see it that way. They don't even think in terms of benevolent or malevolent or service to others or service to self or positive or negative. They don't see it that way because like their thing, like their biggest thing, is just neutrality. And the first time I like really connected with a mantis being, was actually like a parallel self, like a parallel version of myself who is a mantis being. Her name is Tia. She popped in, like her face popped in when I was meditating, and she just looked at me and she just said objective neutrality. She repeated that 3 times. Objective neutrality, objective neutrality, objective neutrality. And then she disappeared. That was all she came to say that, and that was it. Like, that was the whole message. That's their whole thing. So they don't see things in terms of dark and light, positive and negative, any of that. Their whole thing is about neutrality. Like really, really radical neutrality. And that's going to be, I'm sure, part of like the message here. So what else can I say about them? They do kind of run more what we would call like left-brained or more divine masculine energy, because they are very like about knowledge and logic and the mind and thoughts and like philosophy, that kind of thing, leaning more in that direction. And people who like really, really, really resonate with their energy, are highly likely to have interests in philosophy, psychology, you know, the hard, but like physical sciences, that kind of thing, and tend to run things through their thoughts or through their minds more, or at least you have phases in your life where you're like that, or parts are like, you know, aspects of yourself that are like that, because of course, you know, you are many, 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 many different types of things. That's just how their energy kind of goes. But at the same time, like, gender to them is, again, like that, anything that's like polarity based, they don't really see it that way because they are in this neutral point. Gender to them is essentially irrelevant, right? They have gender, but it's basically irrelevant to them. Yes, they do kind of look like, you know, the little mantis bugs that we have here on Earth, or rather the bugs look like them, right? But they stand, you know, they stand up, they stand, you know, vertical like we do. I was actually like asking Tia, I was asking her if do I say that she has skin or does she have a carapace? And she's like, it's not really exactly either, because of course her biology is not exactly like the bugs here on Earth. I think her skin is kind of like leathery, like thick and hard, but not exactly like a hard shell. And she stands, you know, up on 2 legs, and she does have like, you know, the mantis claw. Like, she doesn't have hands or anything like that, but she can manipulate with really high dexterity with her like mantis claws, and her skin is kind of like this like it's kind of like dark greenish gray underneath, but it has this like pearlescent shimmer to it with this kind of like pearlescent like pastel rainbow type of shimmer, and that's how I always see her, kind of shimmering with this pastel rainbow colors, which is very interesting. Um, the mantis beings, they do a ton of work. Actually, they do kind of work with a lot of how do I describe this? They work a lot with the Zetas and other groups who do specific types of engineering projects, even specifically related to Earth, but also out there in the galaxy. They are actually kind of seen as overseers or kind of like teachers or guides or mentors, even to some of these races like the Zeta, who are so old and they've learned so much and they've been through their whole thing. But the mantis beings are so much more ancient, and they have even wisdom and knowledge and experience and expertise that they are like passing down. So they are like an incredibly ancient, like all of the insectoid type of species, right? Like galactically speaking, they're very ancient, and they are kind of seen as like the great grandfathers type of energy, even by other very ancient, very advanced civilizations, and they have a lot to teach. Um, she's showing me her like original home planet, her very original home planet, like how the planet that her group of mantis beings evolved their consciousness on, like when they were like us, right? When they were like us, and they kind of went through their own evolution of consciousness. It's this very kind of like murky, it's like dark, dark kind of like gray rock. There's not a lot of like anything there, and the atmosphere is like very thick, almost kind of soupy. It's like very like there's just like fog and clouds and like big craggy like dark gray cliffs. It doesn't seem like a very hospitable planet. And she's saying it wasn't actually. So a huge part of their original evolution, and this is important for especially for those of you who really are going to be identifying as having had parallel lives as a mantis being. This is like an important part of like what makes you you. This is going to be coming out even in your human life. So some of you watching this, you're just going to be like taking this in, is going, yeah, okay, these are interesting beings and they have some messages that are useful to me. Some of you, this is going to be the moment where you realize, wow, I have a really strong connection to this group. And you're going to be kind of like, having this mantis energy like activated within you. And let me just mention here that a good way to tell if you're sitting there going, this mantis energy? Because it can be kind of hard to tell. It's very subtle. And you've probably been channeling it a lot for your entire life and never really noticed it. But pay attention for clicks. Okay, clicking sounds. That's a huge indicator. That's actually what clued me in today. Especially for me, this isn't necessarily how everyone's gonna do this, right? But definitely for me, I click my teeth when the mantis energy is coming through. I don't know if you can hear that on the camera, but I click my teeth. I'll be standing there staring at the window and I'll find myself clicking my teeth, especially like clicking my teeth by moving my lower jaw like side to side. I know one person who was like has a very high resonance with the mantis energy, and he clicks his teeth like it's like a constant thing. He's constantly clicking his teeth. It's like a really annoying tick he has, but yeah, that's the mantis energy coming through. But if you don't find yourself clicking your teeth, also if you find yourself like tapping on a table, or if you hear something in your house is suddenly clicking, a bathroom fan, click, 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 lights, stuff like that, clicking, even, she's showing me even lights flickering. If you have a flickering light, of course, flickering lights can be all kinds of things, right? But if you're sitting there speculating, could this be mantis energy, and you hear clicks and you see flickering lights, that's a big confirmation, right? Big confirmation, because that's what their energy is kind of like. It's clicky like that, clicky and flickery. So there's that. But so, okay, going back to this planet that she's showing me, very inhospitable, and as they were evolving as a civilization, they didn't have luxury. They didn't really have free time. it was a lot of hard work and a lot of focus. It was like their whole evolution of their consciousness. They had, in order to survive as a species, they had to focus and they had to work. Um, and so there was like this paring away, right? That's why they're not very, they don't have human skills, right? They're not very personable because they have this focus on doing what needs to be done in order to create the future, right? Doing what needs to be done. And there was a kind of narrowing of their focus, right? They didn't get to do things like go to parties or go to the beach, or even like, create and watch like fantasy TV shows and stuff, right? They didn't have any of that. It was, their society wasn't like militaristic or any of that, like some other civilizations, but it was very just focused on this is what is required for us to continue forward. This is what is required for us to evolve and advance and even survive in some cases. So it was very kind of focused and sparse, and that's really how they have remained. And so this has been like, they don't see this as a good thing or a bad thing. They simply see it, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. Because on the one hand, it has given them incredible wisdom and fortitude and knowledge, and also like a deep, deep, deep independence. They had to do everything themselves, right? They did everything themselves. In some cases, she's showing me they even rejected offers of help from other civilizations because they were like, we don't want to be beholden to you. We want to be independent. So they do have this independent streak, which is interesting for insectoid civilizations, because if you're familiar with like, just think of what you know about ant colonies on Earth, right? If you think about some of the insectoid civilizations out in the galaxy, they are very, very, very communal, very, very, very like hive mind, right? A lot of the insectoid, the ancient insectoid species in the galaxy are hive mind situations. The mantis beings are different. They are very individuated, right? They really value the individual. They value the individual and they value individuation. Specifically, they're like, they even have a reason for this, right? They can rationalize this, and they say the individual, allowing the individual to fully individuate benefits the collective, because that is how you can have like, it's not exactly like creating a hero, but it's like that's how you can create an expert or a genius or someone who can really shine. Like for them, it was, they really strived to have like genius scientists or just really highly advanced people who are really highly specialized, right? People who are very highly specialized, highly advanced, and highly skilled in whatever their area was. And so they understood that individuation was a path forward to that. And so when you allow the individual to become highly specialized and to shine very bright, that actually benefits the collective. And so they found that individuation was actually a way to allow their entire collective to benefit and to evolve and to advance. So they're very, 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 very interesting. There's one other thing I want to mention is that she keeps showing me the Hercules cluster, which is a cluster of galaxies like far, far away. I was trying to ask her like, why are you showing me this? Because there's like hundreds of galaxies in the Hercules cluster of galaxies. I'm like, is that where you're from? Is that where you're originally from? Is that where this planet is that you're showing me? Is that where you're from? I can't like get a clear answer from her. I almost get the impression that she doesn't really understand the question, but it's not that she doesn't understand it. It's that from her way of perceiving the universe, that question is irrelevant or it doesn't make sense, or she would almost say, you're asking the wrong question, because she keeps saying it's not about origin. It's certainly not about singular points of origin. There are always multiple points of origin. That she's saying like convergent evolution, which is when you have two things that are separated and they evolve to become more alike. Okay, this idea is important. Let's just take this idea as an isolated idea. I just want to emphasize it. You can have two things, two beings, two whatever, that are even opposite. They can start as opposites and they can evolve to become the same or extremely similar or even one. Convergent evolution. So she's saying think less about points of origin, think less about one individual point of origin and think more about where it is now, where you are now. It's less about origin and more about the present location. Not sure. Not sure why that is relevant, but that's kind of what their messages are like sometimes, because they think quite differently than we do, and that's good. Okay, so the other thing about the way the Mantis beings communicate, especially my guide Tia, is she's like extremely blunt. She just like says it like it is. So one thing I want to emphasize is that as I'm trying to translate her messages here, if it sounds like they are judgmental, or if it sounds like they have some kind of impetus saying that you should do this, that's not what she means. That is basically a side effect of my own personal distortion. Like if you sense judgment or impetus coming through the message anywhere in this reading, blame me and my own distortion. That's coming from me being, you know, a less than perfect translator. That's not coming from her, because their whole thing is objective neutrality. And she's saying, you know, everything coming through this video, she just wants to emphasize, it's like when you ask your friend for advice, and then your friend gives you some advice and you listen and you go, yeah, that sounds like good advice, but maybe you don't take any of the advice, or maybe you only take some of the advice, because you go, even if it sounds like good advice, maybe it just doesn't feel right for me for right now. And emphasizing the objective neutrality, she sees everything and they see everything with complete and radical neutrality, on a way that the vast majority of humans never fully experience. So just want to emphasize that this is all about neutral communication. I'm even wearing gray today. How fitting. Very, very neutral. Bring love into the situation. New moon in Aquarius. So that's interesting, because I was getting the impression that their energy is like a combination of Aries and Aquarius, which is kind of an interesting mix, because Aquarius is the collective, right? And Aries is the individual flame, right? So what an interesting mix, right? It's this mix of the collective and the individual, the collective and the individual. And it's interesting that they're coming through now, because Pluto just yesterday, at the time I'm filming this is a timeless reading for whenever you receive it, but just yesterday, Pluto hit Aquarius for the first time, you know, in like however many years, couple hundred years. So Aquarius energy is all of a sudden highlighted, but Aquarius energy is also being transformed by Pluto. So, and we also have an Aries stellium happening right now. It's Aries season. It was just the Aries new moon, the Aries equinox, and all of that. So Aries and Aquarius energy highlighted. And so the Mantis beings have something definitely to teach us about harmonizing the collective and the individual, getting that into like sweet balance, right? Sweet balance. This is something they can really help us with, just their energy. And a lot of their like assistance, it just comes through energy, right? Even if you have a really strong connection to the Mantis beings and you feel them coming through, you might not even really get words. It's going to be like a lot of background energy. It's very subtle. It could be depending on what kind of guides you're used to interacting with, what type of beings you're used to interacting with, and how they interact with you, right? The Mantis beings could be a lot more subtle and it could be like a less satisfying relationship, but just know that part of this is actually just noticing the subtle energy behind the scenes and trusting that it's doing what it needs to do, and it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. 11th house, that's Aquarius energy, right? The 11th house is ruled by Aquarius. So I have to laugh. That's this is the same this is the same energy, right? Two cards with the same energy. Aquarius and Aquarius. Ace of Wands, and there's Aries. I always associate the Ace of Wands with Aries. This is your magic wand. This is the spark of consciousness. This is the original flame. This is the original flame. I have to laugh, guys. This is just really funny to me. Because I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. Before I turned the camera on, I was like, should I mention this whole Aquarius Aries thing? I don't know if that'll make sense. And yes, definitely, I'm definitely supposed to mention that. It doesn't have to mean that you need to have any Aquarius or Aries energy. It's not what it's about. It's just about using the zodiac signs as symbols of energies, right? It's like when you think Aries, what do you think of, right? How does that vibe for you? And when you think Aquarius, what do you think of? How does that vibe for you? And if you put those energies together, that gives you a clue. It's kind of like a benchmark, right? That gives you a clue of what Mantis energy is about and what it feels like. So if you blend those energies, that's like a portal into accessing their energy. And Aquarius and Aries energy might seem like they have nothing to do with each other. And that is part of this message, right? That is part of this message, bringing together things that have nothing to do with each other, bringing together things that even might want to fight or that might dislike each other. There might be conflict here originally. I could easily imagine an Aries person and an Aquarius person like not getting along very well, right? At least initially, right? I could easily imagine that. If you have Aries and Aquarius energy in your chart, you would be a very interesting individual. That's an interesting mix. So how to approach this, right? Wow. And the devil comes flying out. Guys, look at this devil card, right? The devil, and then we have these two beings, a man and a woman. Like, to me, this man and woman, or man and woman, right, symbolize opposites. This is symbolizing opposites to me. Two energies that seem opposites might seem incompatible, but of course men and women are not incompatible. Men and women need each other, right, for the continuation of the species. they need to come together for the continuation of the species, right, on a biological level. That must happen. And who brings them together? The devil. So taking this on a more abstract level, well, I mean, before I go really abstract, let's just think maybe in your life right now, maybe you're being confronted with an energy that you don't like. It might seem like you're opposite. Maybe it triggers you. Maybe you feel like you really don't like it, right? Maybe you want nothing to do with it. Maybe you just want it to go away. Maybe you just want it to stop. Why, right? Why are you being confronted with this energy? Maybe it's a person, maybe it's a problem, maybe it's a challenge, maybe it feels like your entire life is sliding in a direction you don't want it to go, and you're just like, why? This whole situation, person, place, thing, life challenge, whatever, you're colliding with it so that you can learn to converge with it, so that you can learn to merge with it, so that you can learn to harmonize with it, and ultimately, so that you can learn to love it. Ultimately, so that you can learn to love it. Because when you do this, you stitch together the universe, right? You literally stitch together the universe. This is that convergent evolution I was talking about. So what do I mean by you have to learn to love it, right? There's different experiences of love. Maybe you ultimately learn to love this person or this group or this vibe, right? Whatever it is, maybe you just learn to love it on a very spiritual level just by going, okay, I'm going to just find the source perspective and I'm just going to find unconditional love and I'm going to find unconditional love and allow it to flow through me towards this other energy. And you're just going to, maybe you just get to this place where you're just holding non-judgment and you're holding non-conditional love, and it's all very abstract and spiritual. That is enough, right? That is enough. This thing, this energy, you can still, it's like you don't have to move in with it, right? You don't have to allow this energy to permeate every area of your life. And I guarantee you, if you can get to that place of unconditional love and non-judgment, where you're just kind of accepting it is what it is, holding non-judgment, holding unconditional love, then you can actually get space from this energy that you don't like, right? You can actually get space from it. So that's one option, okay? But for some of you, for some of your situations in life, whatever, this could be like literally learning to fall in love with it. So if you have some kind of person, and this is really interesting, so I'll use myself as a perfect example here, because this message all started coming through for me when I had the random thought this morning. I was thinking about, me and my husband and our relationship, and I was thinking, like, suddenly the thought came to my head. I was like, when we got together, what were we thinking? What were we thinking? Because we were so completely opposite. And it's really hard. I know I mention my husband quite a bit in these readings. It's because I can't help it. Like, our energy is just so mixed up. It's just, he's here even when he's not here, right? But he's really hard to describe because he's a chaos person, and he's a multitude. He's so many different things. He's really hard to describe. It's like, it's almost impossible. I'm not even going to really bother trying. Suffice to say that we are still quite opposite, but we've been becoming more like each other over the years. But when we first got together, we were so completely opposite, right? We came from different countries, different cultural backgrounds, completely different lifestyles. We had basically nothing in common, and yet it was like a case of opposites attract, like you would not believe, right? We like collided. And it's funny to look back, because actually before we got together, we knew each other for years, and we hated each other. We hated each other. We were frenemies, right? We were frenemies, and we drove each other crazy. We always got into like these arguments, and we would just try to avoid each other, and we were only in contact with each other because we had the same friends. And it was like, at the beginning, right, it was like opposites repelling each other. It was like we were going to war all of the time. And yet through this devil energy, right? This devil energy, we were brought together, and we learned to not just love each other on this spiritual abstract level, right? We really like fully, completely fell madly in love, right? And here we are 10 years later. So, there's something about this. So some of you, if you've been looking for love and you're kind of realizing that you've been looking for love in all of the wrong places, you might try opening up, or consider it anyway, right? Just consider it. Just imagine the possibility here. What if you were to date somebody who is completely different than anybody you have ever considered dating? Right? Maybe you even think, oh, that person, I'm not even attracted to them, but like maybe you are, and you just haven't figured out how to be, right? Because think about it. If you have been, maybe just imagine, maybe you have been looking for someone who is a lot like you, right? Maybe you've been looking for somebody who's similar to you, that you have a lot in common with. And then you find that those relationships always fizzle out, or they just never quite work. Something like that, right? Something like that could be going on. And so maybe it's like, branch out, find your opposite, and the opposite of what you think you want, or the opposite of what you've been doing, could actually bring you what you want, right? But you might have to just do this completely like, oh, I'm going to look at the entirely opposite thing. Same thing. This doesn't have to be romance, right? Think about, maybe you're trying to have, you're trying to find success in life. Maybe you're trying to find some kind of career success, or something like that. And it's just not panning out. And maybe you find that if you're really honest with yourself, really honest with yourself, do you even love what you're doing, right? Like, get really, really honest with yourself. Do you even love what you're doing, right? And I mean, like, do you love it, right? When you're doing your work, when you're doing the thing that you want to be successful at, do you actually love the experience of it, or do you just love the idea of it, right? Do you think, oh, you might be like, yeah, I love this because this is what I'm good at, and I really should be successful at this because it will bring me, money, or it'll bring me prestige, it'll bring me a sense of accomplishment, but do you actually love it? Maybe you don't really. Maybe you just thought you did, or maybe you used to, but you don't really anymore. So from this whole message, right? Maybe, just imagine just for a minute, what if you tried something that is completely opposite? Completely opposite. I mean, like radically opposite. So this could be, imagine somebody who's like a high-powered executive business person, and they're like, well, I finally have everything I wanted, right? I'm making 6 figures a year. Like I get to travel for business. I feel like, I have the power, I have the accomplishment, I have the money, I have the status, and yet I don't feel satisfied. I feel unfulfilled. That person, maybe they need to quit their job and travel the world, or maybe they need to quit their job and become a stay-at-home parent, right? And the idea of doing that, of either of those things, might be kind of traumatic, because maybe that kind of executive type of person, they might look at people who just, do briefcase to backpack. They might look at them and go, oh, those are just hippies, just traveling and being beach bums, right? They might actually actively dislike those type of people. They might have judgments towards the type of people. Or the same person might go, the idea of becoming like a family person and becoming a stay-at-home parent, that might be like really repellent to them. Right? They might have a ton of resistance to that, but they might find this devil energy, right? This devil energy somehow bringing them in that direction, right? Maybe maybe life went crazy and they accidentally had an unplanned pregnancy and lost their job, and now they find themselves being a stay-at-home parent, and they're like, this is traumatizing. But if they allow themselves to fully release their judgments of that situation and immerse themselves in it, they could find that they actually can get the satisfaction that they were looking for all along if they just learn to see things from that alternate perspective, if they can actually become the opposite of what they once were. Does that make sense? So there's lots of different ways this can be playing out, right? It could be learning to love someone who is the opposite of you, either on a spiritual level or on a romantic level, or it could be learning to become the opposite of what you used to be. And the thing here is, it's so that you can explore the opposite half of the polarity, and it is only once you have been on both sides, it is only after you have experienced both sides of the thing that you can find neutrality, right? How are you going to be, this is interesting. This was coming up for me yesterday. There's this idea of different types of neutrality. How to describe this? Maybe get some cards. Interesting. So I have some. I haven't used these in a long time. Just let me shuffle and see what comes out. I think I got 2 different types of things in here, but let's just see. I gotta close my eyes because I know some of these are showing up. Oh, wow, and we get amethyst. We get amethyst. You know what? I have an amethyst. Where is my amethyst? Oh, it's put away somewhere. Oh, well, we have this one showing up. It's funny, my piece of amethyst is exactly that same shape. Let me just read you the message on here. Prized for its deep soul beauty, early Greek and Roman societies placed a high value on the cherished amethyst for its ability to surround the aura in a cocoon of light, creating an energetic shield of defense. I reflect in the reverie of the crystal's light, finding myself purified, safe, and protected. Now I have clarity and balance and will connect with my higher self. Listen carefully. I can hear the message meant for me now. So be it. Wow, so be it. So be it. That is kind of this whole vibe, right? Whatever it is, it is. So be it. So the image I was getting from this is that if you've been stuck in one mode of being, life has this way of putting you in the opposite mode of being, because that is actually purifying and clarifying for you. It's part of your journey to expand your bubble of non-judgment. It's part of your journey to retune back into the unconditional love that you always are, but which your human life has often, derailed, right? Learning to truly see this opposite perspective, truly live the opposite perspective, truly become the opposite of what you were, or truly merge with something that is opposite to you. This is one of the greatest challenges. One of the greatest challenges. And this is also something, so what was I trying to say? It's this feeling of like, as you move from it's almost like this amethyst, this amethyst is this kind of purifying energy sitting in the middle of the process. You're moving from one side of the spectrum. You're being yanked over. Maybe you're going kicking and screaming, right? Maybe you're going kicking and screaming, or maybe you're working on this very internally and you're doing it very gently and beautifully. Either way is fine, right? Complete non-judgment about your own process. But as you're going from one end to the other, it's like passing through the middle is this purification process where you will either naturally and easily surrender, or you will have life experiences that help you do this, right? Help you do this. It's like like splinters of judgment, right? Splinters of judgment. That's really how I see them. Splinters of judgment are being pulled out of you, right? Things like bitterness, things like, I don't ever want to be like that, right? That kind of thought, that kind of thought that I don't want to be like that, or I don't want to have to be like that, or I don't want to become like that. That thought is rooted in a splinter of judgment. Or the thought of, I can hold neutrality so far, but I can't hold neutrality about that, right? And that's fine, right? That's fine. You're just like a human doing your best here. That's perfectly fine, right? We're all just trying to like expand our bubble of non-judgment as much as we can. But it's like the mantis beings, right? Their energy here, they're holding space for us to hold like complete neutrality. They are holding it all. They have expanded their bubble of non-judgment like all the way. And if you go even that, they hold non-judgment and they hold neutrality even on that, and then they would say, yes, even that. Yes, even that. Yeah, yes, even that. So they're just holding space for us, right? And you can ask them, right? You can ask them to help you find non-judgment about a thing, right? Or to help you remove this splinter, because feelings of bitterness or feelings of resistance or feelings of I don't want to be like that, or I don't want to be in the same room with that, I just want this to go away, I don't want this thing to be part of all that is, I don't like it, I want it to be expelled from all that is. All of those thoughts, it's like there's this purification process in the middle where all of those things are getting kind of pulled out of you. And then when you get to the other side, now when you get over here, now you're the opposite of what you were, and maybe you're still having residual struggles with that, right? Or maybe there's still a residual like sometimes you could even have to heal from the process, right? You could have to heal from the process, especially if you had to go kicking and screaming to the other side. If you had to go kicking and screaming from the other side, like the executive person, right? The executive who voluntarily quit their job and became a stay-at-home parent, or who went traveling the world, right? They will have less healing to do when they get over to the other side, because they will have volunteered to do it like consciously, right? Consciously and deliberately chose to do this. But if they had to go through like, losing their job and all the stuff happening to them to put them onto the other side, that's when they have to do more healing, right? That's when you have to like heal from what your life did to you. You have to almost heal from the healing process, right? Healing from this change process. But this is where, if you're over here, right, and you're not liking it so much, there could be a grieving process, right? If you have to grieve, if you have to be angry, if you have to wallow, if you have to throw yourself a pity party, you do what you need to do. Anything that you have to do is fine. But ultimately, there is this like next phase, right? There's a next phase where you come into this almost like rising to a higher platform, rising to a higher level here. And that's where we want to be. And that's where the mantis beings already are, right? It's like they're holding the platform for you. They're holding the platform for you. Knight of Swords. Page of Wands. Air and fire. Air and fire. Again, that's like Aries and Aquarius. And Knight of Wands. Knight of Swords, Knight of Wands, Page of Wands. I want one more. And strength. Strength, right? I feel like these energies are the energies that you could use, that you might use to get there, to get to this higher platform, right? Knight of Swords. This is really thoughts. This is like your thoughts potentially going out of control, right? Some of you might have like a lot of anxiety or worries or trying to stay on top of everything, really rapid action. This could also be just like intellectualizing your situation, right? So that could go a few different ways. And then we have the Page of Wands and the Knight of Wands, right? This is, especially if you happen to be watching this, when I post it, we have a crazy Aries stellium going on. So there's a ton of fire energy going around. Also Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius, okay, my whole thing with that is Pluto in Aquarius draws forth the Leo energy, right? Because opposite of Aquarius is Leo. And when Pluto is in a sign, he's actually like compounding and pressing down and purging. He's purging and transforming. Those are probably the best words. Purging and transforming the sign that he is in. So I'm a Capricorn sun, and Pluto was just in Capricorn since like 2008. So I have some personal experience with this, right? I know like when Pluto is in a sign, like other planets, when they're in a sign, they empower, right? They empower the sign. Pluto, he does bring power to the sign. He brings power dynamics to the sign, but his energy is different because he is purging and transforming. So he's actually breaking down Aquarius energy, okay? Pluto is breaking down and transforming Aquarius energy, and in doing so, he brings forth Leo energy. Just like when Pluto was in Capricorn, he was actually bringing forth Cancer energy. That's why we had so much to do with like the rising feminine, right? The whole time Pluto was in Capricorn, he was squashing down on divine masculine energy and bringing forth divine feminine energy because he was bringing forth Cancer. So Pluto in Aquarius is purging and transforming Aquarius and bringing forth Leo. Leo is also represented here by the Strength card. So all that is to say, right, that's kind of like an astrological background to like one of the influences of how this is playing out right now. I was going to say, right, for those of you who happen to be watching this, when I post it, right, we have an Aries stellium, which is bringing forth, and the Pluto in Aquarius is bringing forth all of this fire, right? Bringing forth all of this fire. So some of you might be having, like, some of you could be anger, right? You could be angry, right? And if you're angry at your life, if you're angry at the universe, if you're shaking your fist, right? That actually is part of getting you through your grieving process, right? Moving you through what's happened to you and moving you through just how do I want to articulate this? It's possible that some of you, if you're really angry, especially if you're kind of like angry at the universe or angry at society, something like that, if you're kind of angry on this like kind of really kind of nebulous level, one possible explanation for that, one possible cause of that, there could be more things going on here, but one possible cause is that you're closing out a cycle where you have been putting a lot of emphasis on what other people are saying and what other people are doing. Maybe some of you always asking others for advice, maybe other people just really kind of breaking out of a cycle of social conditioning. Maybe some people breaking out of a cycle of being a people pleaser. Some of you breaking out of a cycle of almost like paying too much attention to what your guides say, or paying too much attention to what like spiritual, I I don't know, like even people like me, right? Even like tarot readers, like spiritual influencers, um, like trance channels, right? People who like trance channel messages, putting like too much emphasis on that, because some of that can like pull you out of like just putting too much emphasis on external sources of information. Especially if there's anyone watching this who is recently coming out of a religion, you could be like angry at, whatever your religion was, right? You could be recovering from that. So many different ways. For somebody could even be recovering from a relationship, like a romantic relationship where their partner was kind of calling all of the shots, or even if the partner wasn't deliberately controlling, maybe you were just kind of accidentally, inadvertently putting too much emphasis on what your partner wanted. So, okay, a little bit of a side note for someone who this applies to. Let me just give you my personal experience on something that I have learned myself in my own marriage is I have actually had to learn that my relationship is healthier when I allow conflict to arise in my relationship. So like sometimes that means I have to tell my husband no, or I have to disappoint him. It could be like about anything. It could be about like what we're having for dinner. It could be something much more significant, like spent like a big purchase or something, right? It doesn't really matter what it is, right? But sometimes I'll be like, oh, if I disagree on this, it's going to cause an argument, right? It's going to be an argument if I disagree. But oh my God, it is so much better to just disagree and have the argument than to let this whole thing like fester and then become this whole festering problem, right? Sometimes for the health of the relationship, you have to allow for conflict. And even another thing is sometimes you have to, in a relationship, for the health of the relationship, you have to, how to describe this? This is going to sound weird, but I hope you guys can like sense where I'm coming from on this. Sometimes I've had to learn, this is me personally, I've had to learn to sometimes stop taking my husband's opinion into account. That might sound strange, right? Because of course I want him to be happy. I want him to have what he wants, and I want to give him what he wants, right? But sometimes for the health of the relationship, I have to just follow my own opinion or just do what I want to do without even asking his opinion. Or sometimes if he gives me his opinion, I'm going to be like, well, I'm going to disagree with you and going to go do what I'm doing, right? It's like, just through it's hard to describe, right? But if this particular little sub message is for you, you'll probably know what I'm talking about, because if you're being too much of a people pleaser, or if you're inverting your own needs and your own desires too much, too often, too consistently, all that does is breed resentment and breed bitterness and breed future problems. And it can even get to the point where your partner like doesn't feel safe and can't trust you because they feel like they can't trust you to actually tell them what you truly want, right? So sometimes for the health of the relationship, you have to allow conflict. And I can feel that this is probably really triggering to somebody, because it's like I can feel that somebody doesn't like hearing this. I can feel like my chest like constricting. Somebody has anxiety about this. So I know that maybe was unpleasant for someone to hear, but that wanted to come out for at least a few people. That message wasn't for everybody, but anyway, can I get back into what I was trying to say? Now I don't remember what I was talking about, of course. Oh, so this whole thing about being mad at the universe, right? That is actually a sign. It's a sign that you're closing out of a cycle. There's many different ways this can be unfolding for you, right? But you're closing out of a cycle of externality, if I could say it that way. You were in a cycle of gathering information from the external reality. That can include friends, the internet, books, teachers, your guides, channeled material, the universe itself, right? You were in that cycle of gathering information, and that is a very, very, very important cycle to go through, because think of how much you gathered. Think about how much you learned, how much you received, right? You got all of these seeds, all of these nutrients, all of this information, all of this data, all of these light codes. You gathered it all from the external reality. And now you might be kind of annoyed or angry because maybe the guidance is like you can't figure it out, right? Maybe one person says this and another person says that, or maybe your guides say one thing one day and then another thing the other day, and you're getting all annoyed and frustrated, and you're like, why doesn't this all add up? Why isn't it all working out? And there's just feeling of mounting anger and frustration. So be angry, right? If you're angry, then be angry. If you have to be angry, that's perfectly fine. Anger is not bad. Maybe even part of this process for you is that anger isn't bad. Being angry, even being angry at the universe, that's not unspiritual. That can even be part of your spiritual process. Okay, it can even be part of your spiritual process. But ultimately, like the ultimate, this is all leading to, right? All of this is all leading up to, however this is playing out for you, right? If this is whatever this is for you, it's all leading to strength, right? To strength. And this is when you're no longer angry, you're no longer frustrated, you're no longer bitter, you no longer feel whatever it is that you've been feeling that was unpleasant. You've just clicked in to your individual strength. You've clicked into your inner fire, but it's no longer angry fire, right? This is like embers, right? Embers. Just think about a fire, right? Just imagine you're camping and you lit your campfire. When you first light the fire, it's like kind of a hot mess, right? It's like you can't cook your hot dog or whatever it is that you're cooking over the fire. You can't cook over the fire when it's a brand new fire, because it's not good for cooking yet. It's like this, the flame is unstable, it's all over the place, and it's also like too hot and too bright, and it doesn't have any like sustaining power to it. So you have to let, a few logs burn down, right? Get them all nice, and then you get a nice bed of coals, right? And then once you get that bed of coals, right? The bed of coals, that is your strength. The bed of coals is your strength. You wouldn't cook a hot dog over a match, right? You wouldn't cook a hot dog over a brand new fire. You would wait. You would wait, right, until the fire simmers down, until you have your bed of coals, until you have those beautiful embers. And once you have that bed of coals, those beautiful, beautiful embers glowing, now your fire can burn forever. As long as you keep feeding the fire, as long as you keep putting more logs on the fire, those embers are gonna burn. They'll even burn overnight. You can go sleep in your tent, you can come back out, and those embers can still be burning. They'll still be glowing. It can even rain, as long as it doesn't rain too much, right? As long as it doesn't rain too much, those embers can keep the fire going. A little bit of rain won't put the embers out. So that's what you're actually doing, is you're building up your heart of fire. You're building up these beautiful glowing embers. You're building up your strength, right? You're building up your strength. And this strength, this is this strength of calmness. With the strength card, it's this. Oh, here we have a woman with an alligator. Usually it's a woman and a lion, right? But it's this person who, through their own inner strength, they have tamed the predator, right? Through their own inner strength. And it's not even that they have to tame the predator. It's through their own inner strength, through the energy that they radiate. Suddenly their entire external environment clicks into place because they are so centered in their own strength. To me, that is Leo energy perfectly. So now just imagine the sun. The sun is the ultimate glowing ember, right? The sun isn't just on fire, right? The sun is fusing, right? The sun is a whole new level. We're talking now, fusion is happening, right? And that's how it's this ball of fire in the middle of space, right? In the middle of the hard vacuum of space, the sun is blazing away, fusing away by fusing its inner resources and just creating all of this light. And the sun, right, is the ultimate light for everything around it. The sun is the ultimate generous being in our entire solar system. No life, very little life could exist in this solar system. Maybe you could get some like microbes or something like that, or some undersea life, right? Maybe some life could exist without the sun, but the vast majority of life in our solar system could not exist without the sun, because we all live and feed on the generous, life-giving, nourishing light of the sun. So with this, your journey through polarity and your journey through your entire process of going from one side to the other side and expanding your bubble of non-judgment and Even if you have to go kicking and screaming, even if you go through an anger process, and even if you have to withdraw from external reflections of information, and even if you draw everything into yourself and you just become very individuated, very internal, right? Very individuated and very internal. That doesn't have to mean that you're disconnected from your collective, right? That doesn't mean that you're disconnected from the collective, because at the very beginning we drew 11th house in Aquarius. So that's double Aquarius energy, and then the flame in the middle, right? Now I could put the strength card in the middle. So you can be the very center, the heart of your collective, right? You can be the heart of your collective. And you do that by building your heart of fire, by letting it become embers, right? By building the embers of your fire, the embers of your heart, so that it can glow and be beautiful, so that you can shine your light out into the darkness and be this heart of fire for anyone who cares to be nourished by your light, right? Anyone who cares to be nourished by your light. So it's like this whole thing is leading up to the activation of your light, the activation of your heart of fire. And to me, this is so relevant for the Pluto in Aquarius transit, which is going on for the next 20 years. So this is completely relevant for you no matter when you see this, right? We got 20 years to work on this, guys. The Pluto in Aquarius transit is going to reinvent the collective. It is going to draw forth your heart of fire. It is going to draw forth the Leo individual. It is going to strengthen and empower the individual. Some individuals will have to go kicking and screaming on this process. Others, if you allow it, you can just allow yourself to open up and shine, right? You can allow yourself to just open up and shine. And then when we're done with this process of Pluto transiting through Aquarius, I mean, you don't necessarily have to wait 20 years. You could click into this right now if you chose. You could find yourself in perfect balance between the individual and the collective. The individual and the collective. And this is what the Mantis beings have already mastered, right? That's why this whole message came through with their energy in the background, because they have already mastered this. They know how to have that perfect balance between self and collective. It's extremely hard to articulate, because this is, of course, something that I, as a human, have not mastered at all, right? At all. So I'm right there as well. But it is so wonderful to know that the Mantis beings are holding this space for us, and kind of through these abstract ways showing us the way, showing us one way. Very important correction there. Showing us one possible way to find your way through the labyrinth to the place of neutrality, where you let your light shine, that shines out from the embers glowing in the center of your heart. I'm going to leave you guys there, sending you so much love and light. I'll talk to you later. Bye.